Yes, please keep heading up that way. I'm Mark, folks, and welcome to the Island of the Dead. Look, you guys are already experts in the place, aren't you? Yeah. Quite far, you've heard a lot from Claire, which is pretty good. And so when she was talking about how you've got the high northern side and the low southern side, the halfway marks have extended from this blackwood tree across the other side of the Island of the Dead. If you want to try and imagine what those unmarked graves might have looked like, you don't actually have to use your imagination. You've got a photo. What we might do, now that I know Rodney is actually doing this work, we might go a bit further along. Just, if you want to see that photo, you'll notice it's on the man.
Thanks. On the end of the line. Have you seen it?
Yeah, I've seen that, thank you.
Next thing, yeah.
So, in the colonial period, look, having convicts buried in unmarked graves itself was not unusual. In fact, it's largely through action rather than design. This is the important. So, most of the time, a convict, if he dies in custody, is buried in unmarked graves, largely because their family on the other side of it. So, no decision making any criminal arrangements. Court Arthur is unique though, because the Reverend Manton made it one of our rules. He made the assessment as these convicts have been sinners in life, they don't deserve to be remembered in death. I'm sure the Reverend Manton was really nice once he got to know. What we'll do is we'll talk about the convicts later for the course of the tour. And they really are the stars of the show. Well, I've taken it up here because it's a pretty sight. So you can take those photos you want. But you'll find the free population aren't really that big. Most of the time it's not the men in charge of the jail, and we'll talk about a few that are buried here. But most of the time it's not the men in charge of the jail that end up dying while they're within the jail. They're men in the middle of their life, really quite healthy. Largely it's their families. Infant mortality is particularly high in the period we're talking about. 30% of children would not live beyond the age of 5 in the period we're talking about. So, particularly high. As a child, you have no choice where you're born, of course, you're not really free. Women are treated as perpetual children in the 19th century. And the most common killer of women in the middle of life happens to be childbirth. It is a man, most of the time it's the cannon fodder, the constables, soldiers, from very much the same background as the convicts themselves. And in fact, there's even a small element of crossover too. So I've brought you here specifically so you can see that headstone there with the cage around it. When you first look at that, you might think it belongs to James Ayler. Does that make sense to you? And you can see it's quite forgivable. Of course, James is the important one, isn't it?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. You can see, can't you? So, here's the guy that pays for it, so you've got to boost his ego. Even if, look, Eliza's name was in the big block of writing, they'd have to put her husband's name in there because she's defined by the man she's married to. That's the thing. And I'm really sorry, ladies. I'm only going to disappoint you further because, as history is written, it's often about men, not about women. And there's more to say about James than Eliza. So James came out to Van Diemen's Land, not just with his wife Eliza, but his mother and sister as well. They came to see James's father, who was also called James, just to make things confusing. James Senior, he was transported for stealing a grand piano forte. So that's why he was here in Van Diemen's Land. Have you seen a grand piano forte before?
Yeah, how'd you steal that?
Well, obviously it didn't work out because there's actually one on display in the Common Arts House, in the little drawing room there, so maybe something you should think about doing at the end of the tour. Even though James Jr. though happens to be the son of an ex-convict, he does eventually become the superintendent of constables here at Port Arthur. And while he's doing that job, that of course Eliza passes away. This is a good story to tell. It's a good story to start off with too, because you can see it's a slight meritocracy. I mean, there are opportunities to move up the ranks, provided, of course, you are white and male. So, I suppose it's not really much of a meritocracy at all. But, you know, provided you fit those criteria, if you show some sort of aptitude, you can potentially move up the ranks to a degree. In fact, there are, even on the Island of the Dead, where that division is so marked, there's actually 2 ex-convicts that are buried, or no, 4 ex-convicts buried up on the high northern side of the Island of the Dead. 2 just happened to earn their freedom before they died, which is pretty embarrassing for them. But we actually have 2 constables they were ex-convicts, serving constables when they did pass away. So there's even that element of crossover. We should probably talk about the important men now. What do you reckon? I'm sure you'll feel lots of sympathy for them. Perhaps the most high-profile individual buried here is the Reverend Eastman. You can see his chest vault. It's on the highest point of the island. It's dead, even up on a raised platform. It made sense to everybody involved because he'd been here in chaplain, varied capacities, for a period of 26 years, and I'm only 28 years of age, so to me it's a lifetime. Imagine how many services presided over in life and so in death, of course, and remains watching over his flock. So look, he's looked after well, isn't he? But it should be no surprise to you, it's his wife and children that weren't looked after so well. So he left his own sick bed to tend to a man on the opposite side of the peninsula, give this convict their last rites. As he's made his way back that evening, though, he was caught in an absolute deluge, soaked from head to toe. Within the next 2 days, he caught a chill and died of pneumonia. So who would have thought it could happen in Tasmania? It's impossible, isn't it? Of course, it's no fun for him. It's really no fun for his wife and 10 kids. They had to go through the humiliating process of applying for a pension. And it was a process. And the problem for them is they don't actually know who to apply to. So he's worked for the government for the last 26 years, right? They go to the government. Government don't want to get in the thing, and they actually have an excuse. As he is also a reverend, he's also been working for the Anglican Church all this time as well. So they say, why don't you go talk to the church? And you'd think the church should be a charitable institution. You know what they say? They say, why don't you go talk to the government? Really, the family never received any money, or the only reason why he's got a beautiful chest vault here at all, it's largely due to charity enacted by some of the other officers within Port Arthur. In fact, some people think that his family was so poorly treated that perhaps that's why he haunts his old home. You can go through there if you're brave, if you think it might potentially be haunted by him. It's an orange building in the church called the Parsonage, open until about 7:30 this afternoon. So something to look forward to. If you're going to the coast tour this evening, well, you have to go through there, so good luck to you. You can see this tour, it's not just me telling you about the people buried here, it's me telling you what you can also go and have a look at. That's not deliberate, of course, but I'm aware some of you might also be looking forward to a Point Forward tour as well.
Yeah.
So a couple of combined tickets. The person that tells us the most about Point Port is buried over here. So it's really worth having a look at. You can just sort of see to the left of the Reverend Eastman's grave, you've got Benjamin Horne's headstone. And Benjamin Horne originally arrives to write a report of Point Port to better inform everybody in the UK about how to operate their new boys' prison called Parkhurst in the Isle of Wight. It's the only big external report about Point Port, and it's not a very positive one, folks. It's about 220 pages, the most exciting thing you can ever read, in which he criticises pretty much every single part of Point Port. Explains arithmetic was poor, the religious education apparently was worse and useless. He even explains the boys singing in church sounded like a cutaway. He devotes paragraphs to how there needs to be singing lessons within the church. So nothing was beyond criticism. He obviously didn't like the place, so you can see what they do. They make him headmaster of the school. He despises so much, really. It's a bureaucrat's worst nightmare to have to enact the recommendations they put forward. To his credit, look, he might have actually been a good influence on Point Port if he didn't die of tuberculosis. So that's why he's buried here. It's a beautiful chest vault, you can see, in a prominent location. You can also see, too, if you look closer, there's actually 3 spelling mistakes in his spelling. So his name's spelled wrong. It's Benji Man. The name school, that's a bit hard to point out, but or to pick out, but it's spelled like pure cream here as opposed to P-U-E-R, the Latin word for boy or youth. At the bottom it says, sincerely regretted by all who knew him. That's a statement you can take 2 ways, isn't it?
Yeah, isn't it?
And I suppose the moral of the story is that you really shouldn't criticise too heavily, and that's something to bear in mind, particularly at the end of this tour. But before we move on from all these important people, we should talk about somebody that's not so important. So you've got Anne Gibbons' headstone just to the left. And again, ladies are going to be impressed with this one because she doesn't even get a full name, does she? And Michael Gibbons, and it goes on to talk about her husband's regiment. And look, this is an era in which the women are defined by the men they're married to. So this is one of the few lady stories I can tell you. It's going to be a lot of wife off. So put up with that, girls. I'm very sorry. But Anne's problem is she's not actually married to an important man. So Michael was just a private in the detachment here. When she died giving birth to their 3rd child together, it wasn't uncommon for working class women, when they die in childbirth, to have the child die right next to her. And it's hard, you can imagine, for them to afford a wet nurse. In this case, even harder to get a wet nurse out into an isolated settlement. What's really interesting about her story, though, is that one of the officers' wives, a woman called Charlotte Greer. You know she's not important in her own right though, don't you? She's important because her husband is Thomas Lebrier, commissariat clerk within Porter, pretty much a chief storekeeper and accountant in one. That woman looks after the child until it survives next up. And your eyes should be popping out of your heads, folks. This is dramatic because a woman like a woman like Charlotte Lebrier should never been seen talking to a woman like Anne Giddens, let alone looking after Anne's child. In fact, it's unseemly for her to breastfeed her own children, let alone someone else's. So to make it socially palatable, she had to share the load with another working class woman, Mrs. Burrows. You know, of course, she's not important in her own right. She's important because she's wife of the superintendent of shoemaking, which isn't very important. This is the lovely problem. But those two women, they do look after the child until eventually it's weaned, it survives to become an adult. In fact, every once in a while, its descendants visit the island of the dead too. So I know you came out here because you wanted to hear some really depressing stories. And I aim to sort of deliver on that. But this is a slightly positive one. And it's a good story to tell, not just because, there's a happy ending, but you can see how there are social boundaries that exist between the convicts, not just between the convicts and the free, but within the free population as well. And these women, they're prepared to break down those boundaries. And as to why they would do that, of course, I can only really guess. But I'd be a boring guy if I just left it at that. So I've been told sometimes women actually like talking to other women. You tell me if I'm wrong in that? And if I am, I've got a response to that too. So of course, you would probably have to lower your standards. In fact, folks, I could probably tell you a bit more if we move on a little bit further. If that's all right. There are probably 5, 7 other people in the same stage, supposed to be seen to. And all they have in common is they've got